Welcome to FCNYC. My name is Ben Chan and I am here with Dominic Mauro, and we are here to recap UFC 152, where we learned that Cub is a good name for a fighter, or Cub should not be judged by a name. You can't judge a fighter by a name.
No, definitely not. Cub Swanson took all of the picnic baskets from Charles Oliveira. First round knockout. I was kind of surprised, actually, because, you know, Oliveira, like we said last week, he's a bit of a hot prospect at lightweight before he dropped down to featherweight. And Oliveira got his shot on the ground. I mean, we said that Oliveira had the ground advantage, and I think Oliveira could have finished the fight on the ground. He let Cub Swanson stand back up, and
then he let him hit him in the body.
Oh yeah, no, that liver shot was brutal. Liver, solar plexus, wherever it was. I mean, it landed and it was thunderous. And you know, Oliveira doesn't have the best footwork to begin with, and after he got pounded in the body like that, he really just stood right there in front of Cub Swanson. And you know, when he backed up, it was just a few inches at a time in a straight line. And Cub Swanson, he's not a great striker, but he's good enough to hit a target that only moves, you know, yay far in a straight line, straight back every single time. And I mean, that was one of the most telegraphed right hands I've ever seen, but it landed. I mean, he got clobbered. And so, you know, Charles Oliveira, either, you know, work on the striking in the gym or work on the grappling in the ring, but one or the other, buddy. That's
yeah. And I guess this is a notice for all the featherweights out in the UFC. Fear the Cub.
Fear the Cub.
Yes. Unfortunately, our next fight didn't bring so much action. We had a Michael Bisping defeating Brian Stann in a fight where it was really hyped up, and actually I think it was Dana White who said that this fight was going to guaranteed to be an all-action affair, and it turned out not to be.
Not even close. I mean, you know, Michael Bisping, for all the animosity that he stirs up in the moments leading up to the fight, and he does stir up an awful lot of animosity leading up to the fight, once that bell rings, you know what you're going to get. Bisping's looking to score points. You know, he's a smart fighter. He fights from the outside. He uses his jabs and his leg kicks effectively. And the new wrinkle in his game in this fight, he used his wrestling very well to set up his strikes. I mean, Stann was really, you know, Brian Stann is a very competent striker, and I think in just a pure kickboxing match, they'd be pretty evenly matched. But Stann was on the lookout for Bisping's takedowns all night long. And you know, when you're trying to defend those takedowns, you can't defend the strikes, and that's what you saw with Stann getting picked apart. I don't really think Stann was in any real danger on the ground at any point, but every minute he's on his back is a minute he's not scoring points. And so Brian Stann has even less of a submission game off his back than Vitor Belfort does, right? So we'll get to that in a second. But you know, Bisping was never in any danger on the ground either, and he knew it, so he used that to sort of set up his point sparring that he calls striking, and win a fairly comfortable 2-1 decision. I mean, you know, it's not the greatest margin of victory, but you know, I think there's really no disagreement that Bisping won that fight, and not the most impressive fashion. I mean, no one's clamoring to see him fight Anderson Silva right now, but I think that's pretty good for Michael Bisping's brain cells, personally. Not having people call for him to get in the ring with Anderson Silva. So we'll see who he fights next. But as far as, you know, hyping up the next Michael Bisping fight, let's just all tone it down a little bit next time, because the weigh-in's going to be really exciting, but the fight, not so much.
And the next fight was a historical event for UFC, the first flyweight fight for the championship, for the newly created flyweight championship, which was not appreciated by the people of Toronto for some reason. We had Demetrius Johnson defeating Joseph Benavidez. Yeah, I mean, after the fight, in the press conference, Dana White even said, look, if you booed that fight, if you didn't find that fight incredibly entertaining, stop buying UFC pay-per-views. I don't want your money anymore. So it's really strong words. Dana White really liked that fight. I really liked that fight. It was really engaging. I mean, both fighters were going back and forth. I don't think there was a lot of point fighting going on like there was in the Bisping-Stann fight. I mean, I think these guys were really going after one another, but I mean, as far as Benavidez is concerned, he just couldn't touch Demetrius Johnson all night. I mean, Mighty Mouse is a really fast guy. We usually see him fighting bigger fighters up in the 135 bantamweight division, but I mean, he looked even lightning fast against a guy his own size. I mean, that's really impressive. You wonder how the bigger guys ever even laid a hand on him. But the story of the fight was Johnson's speed, really. His footwork, his hand, you know, he was really accurate with his strikes, and he really worked Benavidez's body. I mean, he landed like 90% of his body shots to Benavidez.
And
he did survive a scare in that fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, Benavidez did tag Johnson once in that fourth round and knocked him down. And, you know, when Johnson was still a little bit scrambled, Benavidez just jumped on him with that guillotine, and it looked really deep. I mean, I thought the fight was going to be over. I mean, I really thought that with the angle and you know, Benavidez has fantastic guillotines. I mean, everyone in Team Alpha Male, you know, they drill the guillotine, they work on the takedowns, they work on the wrestling, and the guillotine, that's their thing. And Benavidez couldn't secure it. I mean, it's the fourth round. Benavidez has been swinging and missing, you know, all night long. So maybe, you know, he doesn't have as much strength in his arms left as he might have if it had happened in the first or second round. But whatever the cause, Johnson's got a tiny neck. Johnson's got a tiny everything. I mean, he's a small dude, and so you know, Benavidez didn't secure the guillotine. So, you know, they went to the scorecards, and you know, a bit of a surprise actually. I mean,
because one judge had it for Benavidez.
Yeah, I don't really see three rounds to 2 for Benavidez. I'm not sure that guillotine was worth 3 rounds. I don't know what other 2 rounds Benavidez could have won, but. You know, 2 of the judges had it scored, I think, properly. I scored the fight 4 rounds to 1 for Johnson. Wouldn't have done that before the fight. I really would have seen the fight going the other way beforehand. But definitely, Johnson surprised me with just superior technique, superior speed, and resilience as far as that guillotine goes. And more importantly than impressing me, he impressed the judges enough to get a split decision at least, not a unanimous decision.
But he didn't impress the Canadians, I guess.
No, there's no impressing Torontonians.
I guess so. But a good inaugural fight for the UFC's flyweight division.
Sets a high bar at least.
Right, and then in the next fight was the main event. We had Jon Jones escaping probably the worst trouble he's ever been in the UFC.
Definitely.
Via Vitor Belfort's armbar.
Yeah, no sooner in the first round had Joe Rogan finished saying, Vitor Belfort's not known for his submissions off his back, and I turn to the guy next to me and say, that's because Vitor Belfort doesn't have any submissions off his back. Then Vitor Belfort locks in a submission off his back. It's a great armbar. I mean, it just textbook. Jon Jones was not expecting this. He posts up with his arm. He leaves his arm just hanging. It's right there.
Ronda Rousey would have been proud.
Oh, Ronda Rousey would have been just so proud. And Vitor Belfort grabs it and just he locks in the armbar and he breaks Jones's arm. I mean, both fighters after the fight, in the press conference, were talking about how each of them could hear Jon Jones's arm popping. There's breaking happening in Jon Jones's arm, and Jones, to his credit, instead of tapping like a sane person would, just lifts Belfort up and smashes him on the ground a couple of times to you know, release my arm, good sir. Really. Not your typical armbar escape, but you know, Jones also, you know, he does the smart thing. He rolls Belfort onto his neck instead of onto his shoulders to cut down on the amount of torque and leverage Belfort can apply. But Belfort's a strong dude. He doesn't need an awful lot of leverage to break your arm, apparently. Mm-hmm. But Jones did wriggle out.
Right, and unfortunately that was pretty much it for Vitor Belfort.
Yeah. I mean, Belfort, he had his shot. He again, like Charles Oliveira, you know, he had his shot on the ground, and that's a weird thing to say about Vitor Belfort, but Belfort, he had his shot. And like we were saying last week, Belfort not possessed of the most heart. I mean, if the first round doesn't go his way, if you know, he doesn't come out on top of that first round, he doesn't necessarily have the most to offer in the following few rounds. And after the fight, we learned that Vitor Belfort came into the fight with a broken hand. So between the broken hand, knowing that he doesn't have an awful lot to offer on the feet, and landing like 16 strikes total in the fight, I mean, that's not a high work rate for Vitor Belfort on the feet. Between those two things, Belfort kind of went through the motions a little bit. He just stood at range and let Jones pick him apart with those you know, weird leg kicks to the knee or something. You know, not an awful lot Vitor Belfort had to offer afterwards. He pulled guard a couple more times. I mean, Belfort, to his credit, thought that he had the best chance on the ground to submit Jon Jones. And actually, after that first round, I'm inclined to agree. But unfortunately for Belfort, in the fourth round, they went to the ground, and Jones, you know, posted up on side control, almost secured the mounted crucifix. I mean, I thought, you know, Jon Jones was going to elbow Vitor Belfort into unconsciousness, but instead he secured it was an Americana. You know, textbook, Belfort tapped out instantly. Belfort's not getting his arm broken in that fight. You know, Jon Jones can, you know, keep fighting after his arm gets broken if he likes, but that's not Vitor Belfort's style, apparently. And that's a pretty good style. I have to endorse that style of not getting your arm broken if you can avoid it. So, yeah, the man who nearly submits John Jones is Vitor Belfort, of all people. But heck of a fight. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, watching the fight with other people, I never knew that John Jones was perceived as such a heel by UFC fans.
Well, that's because John Jones is from my hometown. I don't like to bring that up, but yeah, no, John Jones, he's a younger fighter, and he's had an awful lot of fame and success thrust on him, and so he says pretty stupid things, like, I don't think this guy's, ready to fight for a championship. Well, that's not really your call, John, and I like reading Twilight books, and I'm on Team Jacob. Like, that's really not something anybody who likes mixed martial arts is likely to want to hear, John Jones, but continue. So yeah, he really is very widely reviled in mixed martial arts world for being lame, really, really lame, and being kind of an arrogant guy who thus far actually has backed it up in the ring, but very nearly did not on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's. I think it's become a situation where it's officially people are tuning in to watch John Jones get knocked out.
Oh, definitely. And his next fight against Dan Henderson, that's probably the best chance we have of seeing him get knocked out. Until he manages to fight someone who's he hasn't destroyed already.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dominic. Thank you for tuning in to Fight CNYC, and we'll see you next time.